welcome to the Missing Piece podcast. I'm here to launch the first episode today with the beautiful Emmie. We're going to touch upon her story to do with domestic violence and what she's been through and what she's comfortable with sharing. So, the theme of this podcast is making peace with your past and moving forward. So, Emmie, I just want to ask you an opening question. Is there anything in your past that you feel like you need to make peace with and or you have made peace with and move forward from?
I think the biggest thing that I've made peace with is knowing I was good enough. I think people think domestic violence is the hardest thing you go through, but actually, when you leave, you're actually starting a war with yourself because
Yeah,
you've removed that thing that you're fighting for. So you have to then fight for yourself. And I think that was the hardest thing. And I think going through like the last few years, believing in myself was something I needed to make peace with. And now, like, I haven't got there fully, but I think I'm much closer to being very accepting of myself now than
yeah,
before.
absolutely. And I think as well, what people don't understand is that leaving an abusive relationship is actually harder than being in it, and sometimes you get more problems. People get stalked, you get more trouble when you actually leave those relationships. Well, or you're so used to it that when you leave, it's like, what do I do with myself now? Like, I don't know who to be now. Like,
Hmm.
I'm just used to being who this person wanted me to be for all this time and doing what they've told me to do and being controlled by them. So when you leave, it's like you're lost. You don't know what to do with yourself. It's like, what do I do now? Who am I? Like,
Yeah,
they break, those kind of people break you down as well.
I think when you're in that kind of scenario, you actually believe you're like Bonnie and Clyde.
Mm.
It's like you like you two are one. It's not like you with him or you as an individual and him as an individual. Like you're one. So when it splits, it's like you have to relearn who you are. Like one of the biggest things I learned on the back of it was when you come out of that kind of scenario and you've been exposed to narcissistic behavior and domestic violence and physical and mental violence, it's like your body stays in fight or flight mode. So
Yeah.
it's draining, like your body's constantly trying to understand whether it's in danger or it's
You're in
not.
survival mode.
And then when you're trying to heal and go through therapy or however it is that you choose to heal, learning to feel safe in your own skin is like the saddest thing ever.
Mm.
Like to feel unsafe in your own skin because you don't know whether you're coming or going or who you are as a woman. You can't rest and digest because you're constantly fighting or flying. Like it's exhausting. But I think there needs to be more awareness on actually the end result because like I'm nearing the light now. Like I feel
Yeah,
very free of
that's
all
good.
that trauma. So it's important that people understand that yes, okay, it might be the hardest thing that you do and it might be starting a war with yourself. But if you win the battle and you keep going, like
Yeah.
it inevitably is going to be better for you.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think as well, the fact that you've actually been through that, that you're open to talk about it after going through that, that's really big because the biggest thing for victims of domestic violence or any kind of abusive or toxic relationship is embarrassment and basically being scared to tell friends and family what's going on or
Hmm.
being scared to open up and talk about it because you either feel ashamed, you feel stupid, you feel like it's your fault, or basically these kind of men make you feel like it's your fault. So you don't really talk about it. And
Yeah.
that's why you put up with it for so long because you haven't opened up to anyone, you're keeping it to yourself. And it kind of becomes the norm. So the fact that you've came here today and you're willing to like openly talk about this, I want to raise awareness for like all women that are actually going through abuse. It doesn't have to just be violence, but we're going to get into that. And the fact that you're willing to share your story, that's a big thing. So
I
it
think,
shows that you
yeah,
are actually healing as well
I
now.
think this stage now where I'm going on podcasts and I'm talking about it and I'm very open on my social media, it's still healing. And I think I've got to the stage now where I've helped myself enough and now I gain great like pride in helping others. I remember a few years ago I saw a quote which only kind of relates to me now. And it was scars shared become lighthouses for those who are heading towards the rocks that you've already hit.
Yeah,
And if I can
absolutely.
save somebody 25% of the trauma I've been through, I've done my job. I
Yeah.
don't get no financial gain or anything
Mm.
from doing these podcasts, but I do it because I know if I can help at least a few people,
Yeah.
I get great satisfaction in that.
Yeah, it just
And
makes you
people don't
feel
want to talk
good.
about it. People don't want to,
No.
my family are learning what I've been through by these podcasts.
Yeah.
I still haven't been able to sit down in front of them and say A, B, and C happened because
Yeah.
how do you explain that to your family? Like, how do you sit in front of your dad or your mom or whoever it is that you class as your immediates and say, this is what happened to me.
Yeah.
And there's some things I don't even remember probably. I've blocked it out that
Yeah.
much. I don't
Yeah.
remember, but there are things I have to live with now, like
Mm.
for the rest of my life. So I have to make peace with it, because if I don't, it's just going to constantly like be a shadow following me around all the time. And I don't want that.
Yeah. And I think no one don't want to touch it. Like, there's not really, like, this is why I wanted to start this podcast, is because obviously my life experience and what I've been through. Not a lot of people want to talk about domestic violence. Like, people don't want to go there, or they don't understand it. There's a lot of victim blaming and shaming around it, and stereotyping. And to be honest, like, before I went through it myself, I was probably one of them people. And I'd probably be the girl that would say, "Oh, well, it can't be that bad. She just gets back with him." Or, "Why does she keep
Mm.
getting back?" "Oh, it's obviously not that bad." Because people don't actually understand, like, the level of mind control.
And it's so minute at the start.
Mm,
It's so unnoticeable. You know, when you look back, you can see the red flags, but at the time when you're in it, like, it just seems the best thing ever. Like, this man's
yeah,
obsessed with me.
yeah,
Like, he won't let
yeah,
me out of his sight. Like, oh my God, like, you feel loved. And
yeah,
then it's
yeah,
like, hang on a minute, that was never right. Like, that early on, like, they saw a good thing
yeah,
and they clamped it down. Like, so it's like understanding, you know, I'm a biggest advocate for people, for especially women, being accountable for their part in domestic violence.
yeah,
And that's not to say that women are to blame at all. I'm not
yeah,
saying that, but you know, we pick these men. We might not see what they're like
yeah.
at the start, but
Yeah, but the thing is, though, around that as well, I also want to defend women, because this is the thing, like, this is what kind of gets me a little bit angry when I hear people saying things like that. And because those people that say those things on other platforms is because they haven't been through it and they don't understand it. You don't pick that man,
mm,
you pick the version of that man
that he shows you.
that you went on the first date with, that wooed you and opened doors with
Mm,
you. So you don't pick that. So when people say, "Oh, she needs to be accountable because she chose," no, you chose the version that they showed you
yeah.
in the beginning. Obviously, nobody is gonna, when you go on a first date with someone, they're not gonna punch you on the first date, are they? Because you'd never see him again after that.
Yeah.
So you didn't pick that man. You picked the mask that he was
Yeah, he picked the
wearing.
mask, yeah.
And then when the mask started to fall off and he started to show his true colours, you probably already got feelings. He's probably already roped you in, and it's already too late.
Mm.
So you never picked that man, you picked the version of the man who he showed you in the beginning when he was wooing you and come across like the perfect guy. Like, I thought I landed on my feet. I thought, "Whoa."
Go on.
Like, yes, I've got a good one. And like you said, wants to see me
Yeah.
every day and all of that. I thought, no other man wants to see me every day. Maybe.
Yeah.
Obviously, now looking back, I've learned, I was young then. I've learned that that's a red flag, because you're turning up and that, like, and I used to
Mm,
think, oh, he wants to see me, he wants to spend all his time with me. Like,
yeah.
he wants to come to my mum's with me, he wants to come to my nan's with me, everywhere I went. He's so interested. But obviously now it wasn't,
Yeah.
that was not the
And I
case.
think that's like, for me, like the accountability is like accepting that it's okay that you messed up. It's
Mm,
okay that you picked wrong. It's okay that you let your self-esteem diminish, and it's okay that you stayed, and it's okay that you felt like you wanted to try and fight for that. Because you know,
yeah,
people say, "Oh, you're a lover or a fighter," but you
yeah,
have to be a fighter to fight for love. So you have to be
yeah,
both. But I think for me, like understanding that I was not who I am now,
yeah,
and that's okay, and it's
yeah,
not my fault, was the biggest
absolutely.
part of that accountability that made life just that little bit easier for
Mm,
me. Because I really thought I landed on my feet. Like I thought, oh my God, I'd just come to Birmingham. I was thinking, this man, oh my, like I literally was thinking, how have I pulled this man? I remember getting in the car being
mm.
like, oh my God, like this man's top, like got my number, blah, blah. I was in the gym feeling like sweaty and horrible. And this man's chasing me around the gym for my number. And I was thinking, oh my God. And then it just ended up being the most disastrous nightmare. And I
Mm,
think, you know, as I said, like I've got things that, you know, I've got PTSD from it now,
mm.
mental health condition labeled for the rest of my life. You're not going to cure it. I just
Yeah,
have to manage it. I've got focus issues with my left eye, so I can see perfectly, but the focus is a little slow. And I'm still waiting for my fourth surgery on my nose to repair stuff. So that
mm.
is still with me imminently. Like it's not going anywhere. And I now have to navigate my life with a mental health condition that limits my opportunities, really, because a lot of people
Mm.
will run a million miles when they hear someone's got a mental health condition, but I have to make peace with it.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I'm never going to reach my full potential or
yeah,
gain.
and otherwise that person's still controlling your life, even though
Mhm.
you've left the relationship, you've got away, you're trying to heal and do your own thing.
Yeah.
That person's somewhat still controlling your life because of the after effects, the ripple effect. People don't see all of that.
Mhm.
Um, and then as well, there's a lot of, so when I left my daughter's father, I ended up going into a women's refuge to leave him. I left my house in Solihull. I had an ensuite and everything. I left with the clothes on my back, with my big daughter and my little daughter in the pushchair, and I never looked back. I went into Coventry Haven Women's Refuge, and it was like I was in a prison. Like,
Yeah.
people don't see that side. So basically, the refuge was like a prison cell. They'd be more
Mm.
comfortable in prison.
Yeah.
Like, I was staying in this refuge with other women and children from all over that have been through domestic violence. You have to share a bathroom, share a kitchen. You just get this little box room for me and my two daughters. And I went through all of that. I had the police give me a 10-year restraining order. I had 4 years no contact. And after 4 years, I still went back.
Mm.
And then that was a thing for like my friends and family. Like, wow, it basically ruined your life. You got the police, the
Mm.
courts granted you a 10-year restraining order, and after 4 years no contact, you went like, like, are
Walk back. Yeah.
you crazy?
Yeah.
And in that point, I probably was. Well, I'll tell you what happened. My nan passed away. My nan had just passed away. My nan was like, she was like more of a mum to me than my mum. Um, and when I was in like school and my teen years and stuff, me and my mum used to clash. We used to butt heads. We never used to get on. Our personalities was
We're
like,
so similar.
yeah. So I used to live with my nan and granddad and just stay at home with mum on the weekend. So my nan had just passed away. He was in contact with one of my friends on Facebook, saying that he wanted, and my auntie, saying that he wanted to see his daughter and all the rest of it. And I just, I don't know, I was so low in that moment, look, and because it had been 4 years, and he told me that like he'd changed, he'd had all this counselling, and like, and I hadn't had no contact with him for 4 years, so I believed him, and
Yeah.
obviously I thought like as a mother, everyone wants your child to have their dad in their life,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? So, um, even I just wanted to discuss that as well, like victims as we're classed, going back and all of that, because it's hard, like it is hard, and that person that you've been through that with,
Mm.
they still have some sort of mind control and some sort of hold on
Yeah.
you. Even after you've left, you have to stay so strong, even after everything what they've done to you and what they've put you through. It's like you still always have it sounds weird and people won't understand it unless they've lived and
Mm.
breathed it and been through it themselves, but you'll always have a little bit of love for them still.
It's a trauma bond, though. Like like soul ties and trauma
Mm,
bonds are so real, and I think trauma bonds don't necessarily have to be negative. Like,
yeah,
they are horrendous, but because it stays with you, you just need to see the negative side of it, or all the strength that you've gained from it, and
yeah,
keep it moving. Like, you're
yeah,
probably never gonna remove that part of your life away from
yeah,
you. And there's times where I sit back and think, oh, what on earth was I doing?
yeah.
Like, I've slept in my car over going back to my mum's house. I've knocked on
Mm,
my friend's mum and dad's door at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning with a bust up nose or black eye or whatever,
yeah.
to save going home to my parents, to show
Mm,
them the reality of what was going on. And, I was very grateful at the time for my friends who didn't understand why I kept going back, didn't understand why I wanted to be with him, but just always there, open arms, just to take me at any given
yeah.
moment.
And that's amazing that you had those kind of friends around you supporting you, and that you had that really. But like you said, your friends didn't understand, and they would never
No.
until you've actually been through it yourself,
Hmm.
and you've lived it and you've breathed it. Like I says, there's a lot of victim blaming and shaming. There's all the comments about like, oh, well, he can't be that bad because she just keeps getting back
Hmm.
with him. Oh, why does she just get? Oh, well, I don't even feel sorry for her no more because she's gone
Yeah.
back there. But it's harder when, well, for me anyway, the abuse ramped up when I tried to leave. He like when I went into the refuge to get away from him, he was doing things like going to my mum's workplace, turning up at
It's
my
like extremes as
turning
well.
up at my mum's workplace. Now, he was phoning my mum's house phone off the hook. She had to unplug it. My mum went to court and got him done for harassment. My mum's included in the restraining order as well. But yeah, like he was catching a bus from one side of Birmingham to the other to go to my mum's work to say, get Elisha to call me. Where's Elisha?
It's
Like,
crazy as well. Like, when I'm all about resolve now, not revenge. Like, I was
mm,
so angry for so long. Like, I have got no issue looking these men in the face and being like, "You're good," and keeping it moving.
yeah,
And some people think, "How on earth do you do that?" But I'd rather be able to be like, "I'm good. Yeah, you can see me. I'm
yeah,
good,
yeah,
and I'm going to walk past you with a smile on my face,"
yeah,
than crying and being angry and kicking off. Because if you do that, they've still got you. So, like,
yeah,
I'm all about. But I just remember, like, now looking back, like, they build their life off of you, and 9 times out of 10, they'll be driving your car, using your bank card,
Oh, yeah.
using your
Yeah,
name.
absolutely.
Like, 9 times out of 10, like, the telltale signs are getting credit in your name,
Yeah.
contracts, "Oh, you open this, I'll give you the money." They never give you the money,
Oh,
like.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I remember at the time I was driving a really bright red Beamer with a number plate on, and that was 2014-ish, maybe a bit after that. And I remember him being like, "Oh, the car's too bright, it's too loud, you need to get that plate off it." I went and bought a
Mm.
black car and took the plate off it. And it's only
He
now,
wanted
this
the plate
week.
off so that
Yeah,
obviously
he could do
your
his own
name wasn't
thing.
on
Yeah,
there, so he could drive it and make out
yeah.
like to other females like it was his car.
And it's only this week I bought a new car and it's bright colour and I'm going to put a plate
Yeah,
back on it. And
yeah.
I feel like I'm really starting to become the woman I'm supposed to be.
Mm.
A big misconception is that you're supposed to go and find who you used to be, but you're never going to find that. You need to go and
Yeah,
find who
and
you're supposed
you
to
don't
be.
want to be who you used to be because the girl that you used to be was
Yeah,
the version of you that accepted that
yeah,
abuse. You don't want to be that person no
no,
more. And then also, there's different categories of abuse. So, like, I've done the freedom program. I'm trained in delivering the freedom program now. That's what I want to start doing within my CIC. So, for all the people listening in, I've just started my own CIC. So it's a non-profit organisation, and that is to work with women and families that are going through or have experienced domestic abuse. So anyway, I went on the freedom program. It's a 12-week course. You go there once a week, face to face, meet other women that have been through the same. You learn all the signs, all of
yeah.
that. So that was amazing. And then I got qualifications in law. I've got certificates in domestic
Hmm.
violence and all of that now. But when I went on the freedom program, you learn that there's different categories of abuse. So you got financial abuse.
Yeah.
You've got physical abuse and violence. You've got coercive control, which is what they do to your mind.
Hmm.
Manipulate, like there's all these different. So people think domestic violence is you just getting beat up,
Yeah.
but it's not. And that's why when I talk about it, I say like I say domestic abuse. I don't actually say domestic violence. And look, I'm a bio and all of that. I got domestic abuse advocate because it's not just violence. And I
Hmm.
think as well, what they do to your mind and the coercive control and the manipulation and all of that, that is what affects you the most
Yeah.
because
I've
bruises
always said I'd
fade.
take a punch in the face
Mm,
over that any day, and that sounds
yeah,
absolutely ridiculous, but the hitting's over in seconds.
yeah,
The aftermath of the mouth is
yeah.
like, that's so damaging.
Mm,
It was that I remember the worst, I think the not the worst violence, but the worst scenario was in the car. He's driving my car, we're driving home. I'm on my phone texting someone to try and arrange to go away for his birthday. So I'm
yeah,
obviously trying to hide the phone. I wasn't trying to be too sneaky with it, but and the thing with me is I'm that loyal when I'm with a man. Like there is no opportunity that there would ever be anybody on my phone anyway, which looking back hurt me the most that he thought that that's how I do
yeah.
him. Do you know
But
what I
the
mean? But
reason why he thought that is because he was
he
doing
was
that.
doing it,
So
yeah.
they project that onto you.
Mm. So we were driving home and he was like, "Oh, show me your phone." And I was like, "Nah, listen, just trust me. Like I'm trying to organise something." And before I'd even know it, I couldn't see out of my left eye. I didn't even know he'd hit me. Like he'd hit me with the back of his knuckle. It had hit my eye and I couldn't see. And there was like a bit of a scramble. And the next thing I know, I'm on the pavement and he's gone in my car and I'm just left on the pavement and I can't see and it's raining. And I remember like walking into a field just to get away from the main road because I thought I don't want anyone to see me. And I still couldn't see through my left eye. And I was thinking, what on earth's happening? I'm bleeding. So I walk and I'm ringing off his phone and ringing off his phone and ringing like this. And I had at that moment my first ever panic attack. I
Mm.
felt like I couldn't breathe. I was like leaving in voice notes saying, I can't breathe, like blah, blah, I'm here. Like, and then like about an hour later, he picked me up. Like I've been in the rain for an hour now. I'm soaked through. I've got blood pissing out my face. Like it was just a nightmare. Get back to the flat we shared, which was his flat. I lived with him. It was never our home. Like it was all control. Didn't have a key for most of the time. And I remember locking myself in the bathroom, and I was in the bathroom for 3.5 hours. I didn't move off the floor for 3.5 hours, and that whole time I could not see through my left eye. I didn't have the courage to look up in the mirror and see what had happened because I thought I'm going to be blind. Like, that's just what I thought. And I remember him knocking the door and him coming in, and he got like really emotional. I remember it being like the first time I'd ever seen any emotion out of him because
And
I
then
just completely shut off. There was no argument, there was no
yeah,
fighting. And I remember standing up, looking in the mirror, and my whole of my eye was not even red; it was black. I couldn't even see my pupil or anything. And I thought, this is it. Like I've now got lasting damage. And I mean, thankfully, over the course of about 12 hours, it reduced and I got my vision back. It's just that now my focus is ever so slightly off. But
Mm.
I remember at that time thinking, he's going to kill me.
Yeah.
If this carries on, he's going to kill me. And it don't matter how many times he stands at that door emotional saying sorry to me. I genuinely felt like if I don't do something, he's going to kill me. And I'd rather
Mm.
be killed trying to get away than staying in it and someone having to find me. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm.
that was the probably defining moment. And after that, I started moving clothes out bit by bit. I was working at a gym at the time, so I just fill my bag with gym clothes and I'd fill my locker up at work. I was sifting my stuff out like bit by bit. It broke me because I thought I was going to be with him forever. Like I
Mm.
thought we was what we when we were good. Like this sounds crazy now, but when we were good, like he was my person. I
Mm.
felt safe with him.
But this is the thing, and this is what I wanted to address as well, and this is the reason why us women in those kind of toxic relationships stay is because the abusers, the ones that are violent to us, they're not that man every single day.
No.
Because obviously, if there was vile to you all the time,
Mm.
every day, beating you up every day, but because you remember the good side, you hold on to that. And you always think, oh, I can change him,
Yeah.
and oh, I can fix him, and oh, if I just you do the most. So, like you says, you book these surprises, and you think, oh, will eventually, like you try to show them love because
Mm.
a lot of these men as well, they haven't been shown love in their childhood, and that's why they're the way they are because of their childhood
Yeah.
traumas. So you think, oh, if I just show him how much I love him, and I'll do all this, and I can change him, and you hold on to the good days because it's like a Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
So you either have an angel or the devil. It's
Yeah.
like being in a relationship with two people, and I never used to know who I was going to wake up to. So it
Yeah.
got to a point where I weren't sleeping because I thought, I'm going to wake up to the angel in the morning or the devil.
Yeah.
Jekyll and Hyde, two personalities. So you hold on to the good things. So then when something bad happens, you think, oh, but we had these lovely days. Like,
And I'm not gonna sit here and I am now what, 7 years on, and I still have moments like that.
yeah,
Not that I would ever go back to him
yeah,
now, but there's moments where I think, "Oh god, if it was just different," or
yeah,
I loved that time where it was good,
yeah,
or like the friendship we had. That was above all else. Like we were like best friends. So
yeah,
when
yeah,
we had these dark moments, it hurt more because it's like
yeah,
you're like assassinating our friendship now. Like it was, but I think being able to sit here and say, you know what, I still sometimes think, oh my God, if it had worked out,
yeah.
that's growth.
Yeah.
That's
But
being
you'll
real.
always, like I says, obviously, you no one will understand unless they've been through it themselves and lived and breathed through it
Mm,
themselves. But you'll always still have a little bit of love for that person.
mm,
And like I says, I went through all of that. I ended up escaping, going into a women's refuge with my two daughters, with nothing, leaving my house, leaving everything behind, basically going with the clothes on my back, and then got a 10-year restraining order, which is big, I've got
yeah,
to
it's
say, because
huge.
not a
Yeah.
lot of people can get that. And that's another thing I want to discuss on this as well is the police and how useless they are in all of
Mm,
this. And I was just fortunate and lucky uh, because he's classed as a prolific offender
mm,
and because of his Claire's law and his. So that's why I got 10-year restraining order because
yeah.
he's got a lot of it on his record. Um, but even after all of that, getting the 10-year restraining order, like I said, I had 4 years no contact with him. And then after 4 years, I went back and it is hard. And like, obviously, if I didn't see when you've got kids with the person, obviously it's harder because he has a genuine reason, even now, to
Yeah.
still try and contact me because he's a father.
Yeah. And the thing is
Um,
as well, like what he does to you is not necessarily how he treats children.
yeah, yeah,
And, being a woman that's been through that and then having to let him see children, that's like, I can't even begin to imagine how it would be. Now,
yeah,
I say this very lightly, but I was very fortunate to not
yeah.
have children. I don't feel that way in my life. I wish I had kids, but I was very fortunate to
Not
not
with
have,
that man.
yeah, because I
Yeah,
didn't have to have that worry. I didn't have to have that concern that they was going to be there forever, or I was going to have to accept that they were going to be around me, or
yeah,
how am I going to move on from a narcissist or an abuser with another man if
yeah,
he's there? Like I didn't have that worry,
yeah,
and I take my hat off to women that are in that scenario or trying
yeah.
to resolve that scenario because it must be so difficult.
Yeah, it's hard because you want to allow them the opportunity to be a dad, but then you got to protect yourself and
Mhm,
keep yourself safe
mhm.
as well. And when you've got children, it only takes for you to allow them to have contact with their child and them to say, "Oh, so where's your mum living now? What's your address?" And an innocent young child would just say, "Oh, we live here."
Mm.
Like, they're not doing no wrong, they're not thinking nothing of it, and then before you know it, they know where you live,
Yeah.
they're knocking at the door again, they're stalking you ended up letting them in because 'cause they're coming to your door, kicking the door, trying
Mm.
to kick the door down or whatever. So, it is really hard, and basically, I was reading some stats. Uh, I always read up on domestic violence and try and get all my knowledge up on it. But what you said about PTSD, truthfully, there's probably like a lot of us women that have been through it that have got PTSD, but we just don't go to see the doctor and get
Yeah.
diagnosed. I truly believe
And
I've
it
got.
was the hardest to
Mm,
process. Like it was the hardest I was on antidepressants for about 2.5 years. My mum and dad knew maybe for about 6 months of that. I was on a lot of medication. Like it got real deep. Like that,
yeah,
and this is stuff I've never really spoken about. Like there's been times where I would be in the car and I didn't know I was driven there, or I'd be outside and I wouldn't know where I was. And my mindset was so low and so dark that he'd made me feel like I'd never find anybody else. I didn't really know who I was without him. That wasn't an option anymore. Like what's the point? That
yeah,
was genuinely how I felt. And then I was having like these attacks with sounds. That was my first indication there was something wrong. Like too much sound was sending me over the edge, and I'd get really nasty, like verbally. I'd never lash out, but I'd be like, "Oh my god!" I
sensory
couldn't deal with
overload.
it. So I went to the doctors and said I've got like this sensory overload. And they were like, "Oh, maybe you're just like depressed, or maybe you got a bit of anxiety." Like, so I was on all this medication, and then um, I remember pushing with the doctor, and finally they gave me therapy. Within the first session, the therapist said, "You've not got depression, you've got post-traumatic stress disorder." And I stopped taking my medication on that day. Like I never took another antidepressant again that day. And then obviously I had the therapy, I come off all my medication, and I'm a completely different person because I've been rightfully diagnosed. But
Yeah,
it's so hard to get there because to prove you're not having just flashbacks or anxiety attacks, to prove that it's actually based off something that's happened in the past is so difficult.
yeah,
It's so freeing once you do get
yeah,
diagnosed, because I think, although I'm like now in my head damaged with a mental health condition for life, at least I know and have the resources to be able to manage it now. That's like the
yeah,
best thing.
yeah. Yeah, I think, like you said, it's not a nice thing to know that you've been diagnosed with PTSD as a result of that relationship, but it's also freeing to get that diagnosis so you can understand why you're the way you
Mm.
are, why you act the way you are. And like I said, there's probably a lot of women that have been through those violent relationships that probably have got PTSD now, but they've
Yeah.
just never, they've gone through that relationship and they've never spoke about it because they've been too embarrassed to open up
Yeah.
and to tell anyone what they've been through. Like some women go through it and nobody even knows that they've been through it still when they leave because they're too embarrassed to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's kept a secret. It's all hush hush. So they've probably got PTSD. They're probably trying to deal with that on their own. The after effects of that relationship and what it's done to their mind and all of that, and they've never been to the doctors or sort out, so they've probably got it and they don't
Yeah.
know, sort of
And
thing.
a lot of women won't go to the doctors because of social services. So if
Yeah,
you've got
so when
kids,
you got
a lot of
children,
women
yeah,
don't want to reach out to any sort of
yeah.
emergency services or doctors or therapists, because as soon as you mention domestic violence and you've got kids, red flags are starting to
Oh
be
yeah,
tipped all
that's
over the
it.
board.
That's it. Absolutely. People are getting their children removed from their care
Mm.
because they was in a toxic relationship. And it's just sad really because it wasn't their fault, and then you got these people that say, oh well, it was their fault because they knew what it was like and they stayed with him or they kept getting back with him. No, they couldn't control that.
Mhm.
Like the person had a level of mind control over them at that time. Like you said, it's a soul tie. They're great manipulators. They wear you down that much within the relationship that when you do finally leave or try and leave, you think, oh, I might as well just stay with them because you got no friends, you got no family. Everyone's fell out of you by then because you keep getting
Yeah.
back with this monster. So no one don't want to know you because they don't understand why you keep getting back with her.
Mm.
So you think, oh, I might as well just stay because I've got no one now.
Yeah.
Got no friends or family. No
And
one.
you like, they'll say, "Oh, they made me," but you push the people away because of how they treat you. You push them away. Like it's like you have to be accepting of the fact that you pushed your own family away, and accepting that is like really difficult because why would you do that? But it's because
Yeah,
of their behavior, and like those soul ties. I think I will always have love for him because he's made me who I am today.
yeah,
I'm a much nicer, more empathetic, outgoing, like person that can I've been to uni now. I would never have done that back then, and I would never sit on podcasts and share my story. To sit on podcasts and say I've been through this, a lot of people are starting to understand why I was the way I was,
Yeah.
and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I won't. I've moved on,
Yeah.
but I have to be aware that that will stay with me for the rest of my life because it was
Yeah.
so traumatic
Yeah, absolutely.
and it's difficult.
And it is out there that basically a domestic violence relationship and what you go through within that has the same effects. This is stats, another set of stats that I've read online. I research this stuff all the time. I try and get the most knowledge because that's what I want to do as my career going forward. The brain of a person that has been through a violent and abusive relationship and had to go into fight or flight mode and be in survival mode and navigate that manipulation, because you end up having to turn into a manipulator yourself to get round them
Yeah,
and to leave. You have to think, how can I do it? You have to
yeah,
start being calculated.
yeah.
How can I do this without them knowing? Um, the brain of a woman that has been in a domestic violence relationship has got the same PTSD effects of a soldier that has been to war.
Yeah. And people underestimate that when I've told people I've got PTSD, it's almost like a cracking joke. Like it's like, yeah, and I really I don't even get angry. I get upset when people are like, oh, I've got PTSD from that. Because if you had it, I'm quite fortunate with my PTSD. I don't ever go back to scenarios that I've been in with him.
Yeah,
It'll be things that trigger attacks.
yeah,
And I'm very fortunate I don't really have that many, but if I'm in a nightclub and a fight breaks out, you'll find me on the floor somewhere.
yeah,
Um, Loud noises, being stuck in traffic, hot car horns, like I've been known to like park the car up and walk away from it. Like it's debilitating things that like trigger me.
yeah.
But when I first got diagnosed, I was having those flashbacks all the time.
Mm.
All the time.
And the thing is, like, when you like admit that you've got PTSD, because people don't understand it or because they haven't been through it themselves, they think you're weird or whatever. And
Mhm.
then, like you says, you get people that post these memes and whatever on Instagram, like about PTSD, or go around saying, "Oh, I've got PTSD." I have, like, joking about it when they
Mhm.
haven't actually really got it, like using it as like a trend, like it's something funny, or like basically it takes away the seriousness of the people that have actually been like
Yeah.
yourself. You have actually got a diagnosis of PTSD, like,
Mhm.
so that, and you are not weird for like admitting that you've got a mental health condition, because at the end of the day there's probably a lot of females that have got a mental health condition, like I said, or PTSD, but they've never sought help about it,
Yeah.
and they're running around doing all these crazy things and acting crazy, and they've actually probably got mental health and PTSD themselves, but they haven't took the time to go and see a therapist and to heal and all of that. It takes a
Yeah.
lot, and that's how you
It's
know.
been a journey. Like the last, I'd say like 8 or 9 months have been the most difficult for me. Like
Yeah,
I've become very open to healing and I've had to have very difficult conversations with myself and with my friends and people who I'm meeting along the podcast route who are helping me. And like, it's been really difficult to accept, I guess. Like, the woman I am now can't believe that I ever went through that.
yeah,
Like, I just think, what on earth was that all about?
yeah,
And it was a repetitive thing,
yeah,
3 boyfriends were all absolutely horrific to me and it progressively got worse.
yeah,
And it starts off with them throwing your keys at you and accidentally like clipping your head and you end up having to get your head glued and all these things that happen, but I'm out of it.
yeah,
And it doesn't matter how hard the journey is out of it, I'm safe. And
yeah,
I'd rather take all the bad days and the lonely days and thinking I've made a mistake and wanting to go back. And I'd rather go through all that again to be where I am now.
yeah,
I
because
work in mental health now, so I
yeah,
can use what I've been through to help others, but it's not easy. And I think people need to understand that the easy part is being in it.
yeah.
It's the aftermath that's
Yeah, it's hard. It's easier to stay. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of strength, every last ounce of courage within you to leave. And then when you do leave, you're broken, you're a mess. You don't know who you are no more, because you've been controlled for
mm,
so long in that relationship by that person. Do this, wear this, or wear your hair like that. Like, you lose your identity. Like, who am I? Like, you leave it, what do I do now?
mm,
And you ain't got the strength to even like want to get out of bed. But and with me, obviously I had children, so like it was hard. it's hard healing when you've got to put on a brave face.
Yeah.
You got to be strong. You got to be a mom, and you got to do this damn thing every day, the school run, this and that, and you're still trying to heal yourself. And then you got to try and co-parent with the same person
Yeah.
that's broke you down. So
Yeah.
you can't even get away from them really, because they're always going to be a part of your life. But it is hard.
It's the things that you wouldn't even think of that smack you in the face so hard, like,
Mm.
excuse the pun, but, like, I went to the dentist and he was like, "Have you got an eating disorder? Because your teeth are, like, a mess." And I had to admit I just wasn't taking care of myself.
Yeah.
You know, there were times where I don't feel embarrassed admitting this now because it's strength. It's like, I've been through it, I'm out the other side of it, but, like, I wouldn't even be telling you, like, when was the last time I showered?
Yeah.
Or when was the last time I brushed my hair? Or when was the last time I ate? Or, you know, people were ringing me like, "Are you all right?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, why not? We haven't heard from you for a day." Like,
Yeah.
I just go missing. And I
And
weren't doing anything, like,
yeah,
to in order to,
but you
but I
don't.
got no routine, like, I got
Yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah.
didn't wanna get out of bed, so just didn't do anything, and I used to get so embarrassed by that, but to be honest, if the only thing I wasn't doing was eating and showering, like, there are women that would have just gone and thrown themselves off a bridge or, like,
Yeah.
gone into, like drugs maybe or alcohol. Like, I'm
Yeah.
so blessed that I was able to find some strength to not destroy myself
Yeah.
even further, and I understand completely when women go down paths of absolute self-destruction afterwards because
Yeah.
you've no idea
Yeah.
who you are, you've got no support
Yeah.
around you because you've hidden it for so long. So you do battle it. You're at war with yourself. So when you say like PTSD is like going to war, like it is. Like
Yeah.
it's constant. It doesn't switch off. You might go to sleep, but you wake up, you're in exactly the same headspace.
Yeah.
It's like
But there's
ongoing.
people anyway, like with mental health that, look, I'm glad you talked about that, because even people that haven't been through domestic violence, but there's people anyway that are suffering with mental health conditions. I need to say, 'cause I forgot a dry mouth. People that are suffering with mental health conditions that don't do those things anyway. They
Yeah,
haven't got the effort to shower,
yeah,
the energy. They haven't got the energy deep within them to even get out of the bed,
yeah,
even to go to the toilet for a wee.
yeah. And the worst thing is once you've got up and got in the shower, you feel like a completely different person. But it's the thought of having to get up. Like, what am I getting ready for? Like who? Like no one's talking to
Yeah,
me. No one wants me. Like,
yeah,
and I think I've been single for a fair while now, and I've got to 31, and I've got no children, and I know that's a consequence of me not dealing with my trauma because
yeah,
I understand it's difficult. I understand going to therapy and reaching out is difficult, but I inevitably have ended up alone because I didn't want to be vulnerable or trust anybody again. Like
yeah,
now I'm in a scenario where I'm very open to trusting a man again, and I want to find my person to have children with, and I'm very proud of myself for that because that was the biggest hurdle. Like how many
yeah,
times you hear, "I don't want no man," and like that inevitably the women that have been through trauma then isolate themselves from healthy relationships because they'd rather not run the risk of getting into a scenario again,
yeah.
but it only impacts you
And that's
negatively.
that's where I'm at now. Like I'm in that, oh, I don't want no man stage. But I think because I've got 3 kids as well, and I always think, and this is another thing what I don't like as well. Like the generation that we're living in, it's very toxic. There's a lot of, like I says, like no other platforms want to touch on domestic violence,
No.
or they don't understand it, or people's mindsets are so toxic in this generation.
Yeah.
Like Instagram's a very toxic place. Like don't get me wrong, it can be used for good, positive, meaningful, purposeful things as well. It depends what you're using it for. But all these memes and all these jokey pages and that, they're all toxic and that. And then you go on there and you read certain things and it makes you feel rubbish. And then people in their comments, victim shaming and blaming, oh, or she should take accountability because she picked that man. Like I said, you didn't pick that man, you picked the version that he showed you in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because if he showed you that in the beginning,
Mhm.
you wouldn't have even entertained him. But then there's another thing to do with single mums. Like I'm a single mum and I've got 3 children. And then people will say like, oh wow, no man's gonna want you. You got 3 kids. Like, do you know what I mean?
Somebody
So
will. Like, and I think people talk on the majority a lot.
yeah,
Yeah, like if we're being real, most men would pick women
yeah,
without children. That's a
yeah,
fact. That's a stat. But
absolutely,
there are men
yeah,
that would see your value and see how well you raise your children and think, "Oh my God, like I want to look after her." And
yeah,
that's where I'm at now. Like, you know, the pool is getting bigger of women to pick from. You know, I'm getting older and I don't have children, and I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm desperate to find somebody, but I do want to find that relationship where I can settle down and have a child with somebody and
mm,
have that man to rely on. But it's taken me probably 5 years to admit that.
yeah,
So I'm at a point now where I just want to help everybody. Like
yeah,
even men that have hit women, who come out the other side and admit it and go and get therapy and deal with their trauma and they're like in a bad place, I help them
Yeah.
because admitting it is a huge thing. And like, understand, a lot of men will never that I didn't do that, or
Yeah,
they
yeah,
they don't
yeah.
even like acknowledge that they've even caused somebody that pain. I'm very fortunate that my ex actually did that. He actually
Yeah.
came to me and said, "I'm really sorry for what I did to you.
Yeah.
It's beat me up over the years. I shouldn't." Whether I believe him or not is a completely different
Yeah.
scenario. But I got that closure. A lot of women don't get
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
closure.
Yeah. They
It's
don't ever
hard.
get that apology, and like you says, you feel fortunate that you got the apology from
Mm,
him saying that he's sorry. But then you also just have to be very careful because obviously, like I
mm,
said, I had 4 years no contact, and then I went back to my daughter's father, and he did the same thing. He kind of got back in contact with me. I'm sorry, and that was a way to reel me back in. And
mm.
then obviously he was exactly the same. So I'd done all that healing, 4 years away from him, got my life back on track, went back. He was obviously perfect in the beginning again, and then he was exactly the same man.
Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes these narcissistic men, they don't ever change. They don't know how to
No.
change. And like I says, I'm not blaming them, and I'm not blaming him. And he's got his own childhood traumas, and I can sit on this podcast and I can say all this like I'm not like sitting here running him,
Yeah.
or he will tell people himself. He will
Yeah.
actually
Inevitably, like
he will
these men
say
have been
like
through their own stuff.
he will actually tell people he's got childhood traumas. He
Mm,
openly like, and that's why I'm talking about it, because he openly tells loads of people what he
yeah.
went through in his childhood. And I understand why he's the way he is, but then I couldn't stay any longer. And then my children witness that, and then they end up with their childhood traumas, or my daughters think that that's a normal
Yeah.
relationship because they've seen me stay in it. And then they end up getting with a man like that because, oh, my mum stayed, it must be normal. I'm going to put up with that when I'm older, sort of thing. And then
Yeah.
so then you leave and then you get labelled as a single mom. And then people make you feel shit about being a single mom. Whereas, matter of fact, I could have had one baby father.
Yeah.
I could have stayed with him all my life, like my nan did with my granddad. Had all my children with my one man, stayed with him, loyal to the soil, married to him and whatever, and get beat up and treated like rubbish. And there's a lot of women that do that because they don't want to, because they've got kids with a man.
Mm,
They just think, oh, we don't want to come from, like, we don't want them to be from, my children be from broken home.
yeah.
So they stay in that relationship, and I could have done that. And then I would be that woman that only had one baby father, had all my kids, and was with them for
And
the
a lot of
rest of my
people do live
life.
that life and
Yeah.
don't ever tell people. Like, so, this world is like showing perfection. Like
Mm.
everybody's in like a healthy relationship. We don't know what goes on behind doors. They only show you what they
Yeah.
want to see. And like I, I suffered a miscarriage with my ex. I don't really talk about it. Like, in fact, most people will hear that for the first time now. And that's something that's eaten me up because I blame myself for years that the stress I was putting myself in caused that miscarriage. And it was something that I really struggled to not feel guilty about or not feel like it was my fault. Although he hadn't like beat me up during that time, I thought, oh my God, this is going to fix it all. This is he was so happy, and then like it was like so exciting, and I thought, okay, like maybe we're gonna figure this out. And then that happened. Like my parents and like even my sister doesn't even know that. That's just me being real with you.
Well,
But
thank you for sharing that, and I'm glad I can make you feel comfortable enough to share
yeah,
these things that
definitely.
you've
I
never
think it's
spoke about.
important. Like I've always thought, what if I can't get pregnant now? Like, that guilt was carried with me for a very, very long time. Like that guilt,
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh, I've done that to myself. I'm going to get older now and not be able to have children. And I haven't shared that story out of fear of being judged. But now I just think, you know what, it wasn't my fault. And my body was not ready for that
Yeah,
pregnancy.
I
And
don't want to say this, and I don't want to make this sound negative towards your miscarriage and what you went through, but everything happens for a
oh,
reason,
100%.
and that's protection for you because you would have had a child with that man.
Hmm.
And even though, obviously, like you said, you was both really happy about the
Yeah.
pregnancy, and he was really happy and stuff. Obviously, he is who he is. So you
Hmm.
would have been in my situation, having a child or children with that man, and then the children have to grow up witnessing that and be in that environment, and then you don't want to leave because you don't want your children to come from a broken home. But to me now, like, and I shared the quote on my Instagram story the other day, a broken home to me is when the woman stays and the kids know that their dad is hitting their mother. They witness the arguing, the toxic relationship. And I'm not just blaming men because
Oh, it's
I
both
can hold my
sides.
hands up
Yeah.
high. I can take accountability, and I can hold my hands up high and say that I used to be a toxic girl. Like
Yeah.
I did, I really did. I used to run my mouth. Um, like I've never been one of them girls that's been like, "Oh, sucky mum" or any of that. Like like rude like that.
Yeah.
Like, but I did used to argue with him, and I did used to like try and hurt him when we'd argue. Obviously, I was younger then,
Yeah.
and I think like,
But you get to a point where you have to fight back because it
yeah,
gets that bad. Like, I think at that time where I'd suffered that miscarriage, I was so depressed, like, so sad. His behaviour became a second priority. And that's where I found the strength to leave because I
yeah,
wasn't focused on him. I didn't care if he hit me. I didn't care if he shouted at me. I didn't care if he threw dinner plates at me. I didn't care what he did, whether he went out in my car, slept with other women, come back with makeup on. I didn't care anymore because I just lost a child.
you'd mentally checked out at that point. So
Yeah, like
whatever he's doing,
I just didn't care.
does not affect you anymore. It doesn't affect you. Like
And he
my
knows that. He knows that
yeah,
that that moment was where I just gave up. I just thought, no,
yeah,
no, I can't do this. And
yeah,
it was the hardest thing I ever did. I really truly feel like it was the only heartbreak I've ever felt.
yeah,
Like out of the relationships I've been in, I really truly felt like that was where my heart was completely broken because I was suffering grief and I was suffering losing my best friend and making a decision on 75% bad but 25% good. And I was trying to
yeah,
understand like what life would be without him. And I was in Birmingham on my own away from my family. And I had to then say to my mum and dad, I'm coming home, which I found embarrassing. And
yeah,
it was just like all these things that I was in a car that I didn't like because he made me change my car. And I thought, what on earth am I going to do now?
yeah.
But you just piece it back together. It's like someone shook the fidget jigsaw box, thrown it on the floor, and bit by bit, you just put the jigsaw back together again.
But yeah, you are a strong, amazing, amazing, strong, beautiful woman, and you have to be to like. I was in the women's refuge with people that cracked up,
Mm.
ended up in a mental home, mental institute, got sectioned.
Yeah.
I made friends with this Scottish lady. She was my best friend in the refuge. Like we used to go in each other's rooms and put like vibes cartel on and that to like hype each
Yeah.
other up, like
Yeah.
because we was depressed, crying, and
Yeah.
we couldn't get out of bed. Dance around the rooms with the kids and that, like, and she ended up becoming a drug addict. I left the refuge and we used to speak and that we'd still message each other and do calls and that. But she got her kids removed from social services because of that domestic violence relationship, and she won't mind me saying she and her name is Scottish woman, lovely. I still talk to her here and there, but she's turned to drugs. She's a drug addict now. She's lost because she lost the kids and she couldn't come back from that because that alone as well. You've been through that violent relationship. All you've done is loved the wrong man.
Yeah.
Like that's all you've done. You fell in love with the wrong
You're
man.
guilty of falling in
Social
love.
services come whip your kids away because of the domestic
Yeah.
violence. So then you got to deal with that toxic relationship and the breakup and then losing your children as well. And some women don't even try and fight to get their kids back because they just give up at that
Yeah.
point. They're done.
I'm just not willing to live any more of my life in anything other than peace.
Yeah.
But that's just where I am now, and it's
Yeah.
taken a while. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying it's easy, but
Yeah.
I refuse to lead a life now that makes me unhappy. Like I find so much like peace in helping people now. Like you wouldn't believe it. I mean, I'm just a 31-year-old female living in Birmingham who does nursing, and like I'm not no celebrity or influencer, but you wouldn't believe the amount of people that message me being like, "Oh my life, like I relate to your story so much," or thank you so much for being so honest and open. Like people
Yeah.
aren't like that anymore, and
Yeah. I mean, even I've said that to you myself.
yeah, like I think it's hard. Don't get me wrong. But every time I've left a podcast studio or every time I've met new people, I mean, the way me met was just crazy. But I just feel so much lighter because
Yeah.
I know at least some person watching this will see that and think,
Yeah.
okay, like
Yeah.
she's done it. Like I've got
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I just refuse to live my life
Yeah.
in any way that I don't want to live it anymore.
Yeah.
And I know that that means being a bit calmer and thinking ahead of time and really watching people's behavior and energy. And I'm so like perceptive now of people. As
Yeah.
soon as your energy's off, like, I'll cut people off that I've known 20 years. If you move weird around me,
Yeah.
I'm not tolerating it.
And that's amazing that you can do that, that you've reached that level, you've got to that
Mm,
point. But then also when you cut those people off, or maybe even certain friends you'll cut off because of what you've been through and they don't understand you because they haven't been through it themselves. And then they, like you said, move weird or whatever, and you cut them off and they don't understand that. Uh, they don't understand why
no, they
you're
don't.
doing that, but you've been through so much trauma that you've got to protect yourself.
Yeah,
And so you don't align with certain friends or certain, you can't relate.
yeah,
Like I says, my best friends I made was in that when I was living in that women's
yeah.
refuge with my two daughters, because all the women in there with me, we've all been
Knew
through the
exactly.
same.
Yeah,
Like, whereas when I tried to talk to my old friends about it, they didn't understand it. And then because some of them knew him as well, they'd go out to a nightclub and they'd see him in the club and they'd speak to him and that and have conversations with him. And obviously he'd just be slagging me off and
yeah.
trying to turn everyone against me. But they'd engage in conversations with him. And I think, I'm in a women's refuge with my children. I've had to
And you're
leave
going to entertain
Birmingham,
him.
leave my mum, my whole family, everything, leave my house, my nice house in Solihull. I had ensuite, the clothes on my back, and then you to seeing him out and you talking to him.
And then
Like,
coming to you and telling you you've spoken to him as well.
yeah,
Like that's
that they was
it.
being toxic in it as
Yeah.
well.
I had friends like would understand what I've been through, and then they'd be coming to me with their stories about, oh, I've gone back to him, and I'm thinking, you've literally
Yeah,
watched me beyond like the depths of despair. Like I
yeah,
just didn't want to live anymore.
mhm,
I just thought, how am I going to navigate this? And then you think I'm going to sit and watch you go and do the same thing, and then come and almost like give me the drama. Like that's not going to
yeah,
happen. And I think I've become I mean my circle's so small now. Like who I spend my time with is few and far between.
yeah,
Learning to be okay on my own and in my own presence and in my own company
yeah,
was a massive thing as well. But I'm at like a point of peace now.
yeah,
I can't see myself ever allowing anything that makes me unhappy around me ever again. And whether that be that I see too many red flags or whether I don't let people in or whether it takes me that bit longer to find somebody, so be it, because I'm not prepared to undo all the work I've done for my mental
yeah,
health now to be as strong as I am. And I
yeah,
still don't see myself as a strong person. My friends will always say, "Oh, you're Superwoman," or "You're Catwoman. You've got 9 lives," or they'll always say
yeah,
like, you've said it, and I sit there and think,
yeah,
but believing it is a completely different scenario. Like
yeah,
I know I'm strong. Like I've been through a lot this year myself, and I know that most people wouldn't maybe have got through that. But I was on the cusp of having a mental breakdown. I know that.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
my behaviour was so erratic, and I'll have a casual glass of wine or whatever, but I
yeah,
don't turn to alcohol
yeah,
because I know my relationship with alcohol
yeah,
at a point was not very good.
yeah,
I go out and get absolutely
yeah,
obliterated, and then I'm making myself even more vulnerable. So
yeah,
I'll normally drive on nights out and I'll have like a cheeky cocktail every now and again, but I
yeah,
know that I don't have the best relationship with alcohol.
yeah,
So it's limited to safe spaces basically,
mm,
or who I'm with. Do I trust that person to like keep me safe if I do drink too much?
yeah.
And so I just don't really.
Yeah, because it's easy to drink away the pain. Some people smoke weed, so they might try and smoke away the pain,
Mm,
or have sex with multiple people to try and get over
yeah,
what they've been through. It's easy to do all of that, but then at one point you gotta think, hold on a second, none of this is helping me.
yeah,
I need to fix up and really, because it makes you feel good in that moment. You go on a
hmm,
night out and get obliterated, and you're dancing and you're having the time of your life, laughing, forgetting about your troubles, drunk and that, and then the next day you wake up to reality.
yeah. And it hits even harder because you're
Yeah,
feeling terrible. And
yeah,
I think I had to strip right back. I had to go right back to the beginning. Like even in my therapy, went right back to like the first time I got upset at school, or like the first bullying case, or my first boyfriend, or you strip it right back and you have to go all the way back to come all the way forward. And
yeah,
until you've gone back, like people say, oh, you take 2 steps forward and 10 steps back, but you have to. And
yeah.
that is my biggest advice. Don't be afraid to go all the way back to the start of your story, because it will make you understand why you allowed that behavior. Like
Yeah,
I've said it once before on another podcast, but me and my dad was a policeman growing up, so he was very stern. Like he was, you're wearing black socks to school, don't let me catch you. Like it was
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah,
Like I mean, we laugh about it now,
yeah,
but there was an incident where he chased me down the stairs in a fit of rage. And I just got my arm stuck in the door. It was a sheer accident. It was horrific. Like my dad was absolutely distraught. Like it was just a father annoyed at a daughter. I ran away. He chased after me. Like it was, he would never have hit me, but it was just that scenario of like domineering fatherhood, and I had, like, my arm was completely black from top to toe, and I had to go to hospital and thought I broke my arm, and luckily I hadn't, and my mum and dad had to navigate through that themselves, which was mad. Like that, I can't even begin to the difficulty of that conversation. And I remember going back through therapy, and I said, "Yeah, but he didn't mean it." And the therapist said to me, "Repeat that again." And I'd say, "Yeah, but my dad didn't mean it, so it's okay." And she'd say, "One more time." But I couldn't say it the third time because I realised in that moment that I'd said, "Oh, he didn't mean it, so it's all right."
Yeah.
And I carried that with me. And it's
Yeah.
horrible to think that, like, childhood trauma, like, something so small and insignificant, and it was an accident, and it was just one of those horrible scenarios that you would never dream of getting in, had then resulted in me accepting being hit because I just said, "Oh, he didn't mean it. He said
Yeah.
sorry."
And that's what they say, these men, like, I didn't mean it. And
Yeah.
like, I remember the first time I was ever physically abused, the man broke down and he was more upset than me. And he was hysterical, crying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. Oh, look what I've ruined it now. You're gonna leave me, ain't ya?" And all of this.
Yeah.
But that's obviously reverse psychology, and I
Yeah.
didn't realise at the time. But because they say I didn't mean it and that, and then you just end up forgiving them, and then you just go around in
Mm.
that vicious cycle. And I've done therapy now. I've done 15 sessions, and it is hard. Like, and there's a whole stigma around therapy. People are embarrassed to even say that. Well, one, like you said, to say that they've got a mental health condition, people
Yeah.
try and hide it, or they're embarrassed to say that they need therapy, or they're embarrassed to say they're seeing a counsellor. And I get it,
You've
because
gotta want to be therapized.
yeah,
You've got to go to, if you choose to go to therapy, you've gotta go into that session knowing you're probably gonna get annoyed, you're probably gonna get triggered to high heaven, and there's gonna be things that you don't like being said to you, but you've got to want to be there, because if you don't give therapy 100%, there's no point going.
yeah,
So I understand why people don't go, because if you're not ready to say, "I want help, please help
yeah.
me," it's
And you
it
have to find the right therapist as well,
yeah,
because sometimes you might meet a therapist that's not for you, that you're not aligned with them, and like,
yeah.
that just doesn't help.
I was very fortunate with my therapist. I I was supposed to have one therapist, and then she couldn't do it. I ended up with a student, and she was young, and she was like very with it, and then she just got me, and she triggered me session after session after session. She just trigger. But I got there, and she did what
Yeah,
she needed to do, and I felt by the end of it, I thought, okay, I can go and do this by myself now, and that was the
yeah,
beauty of accepting help
yeah. And I think as well, with like therapy and counselling and stuff, it is, you think it's going to make you feel better, but it actually gets harder
before it
before it
gets
gets
better.
better,
Yeah,
because, like they say, it's the quote that they use. You've got all this stuff, and you just pack it up in a box and you put it in the cupboard and close the cupboard. This
yeah,
is what my therapist said to me. And you keep going, trying to live your life, push it to the back of your mind. And that's what we try and do. Like, when we go through things, we try and push it to the back of our minds, push it, and just keep living as normal and forget about it and try and be happy and whatever. And keep ourselves busy, constantly occupied and doing
mm,
things, and to not feel what we've been through. And then when you go there, they open that box up, they get it all out, and then it makes you feel worse
yeah,
before it makes you feel. So it is hard. Like, there's some people that go to therapy and counselling, and they can actually have a mental breakdown from going,
yeah,
because they're realising what they've actually been through. So when I went, all I did was cry for weeks and weeks when I was doing therapy, because it was actually revisiting my trauma and
yeah.
what I've been through, and bringing it to the
And
surface.
when you revisit, you tend to remember what your mind blocked out at the time. So when they ask you to go through scenarios, you'll remember things that you've blocked out. So it becomes even more realistic, because
Yeah.
you're reciting a story that even you've not told yourself for years.
Yeah, because you've never talked on it. You've never talked on the domestic violence or anything. It doesn't have to just be domestic violence. You've never talked on what you've been through until you go to the therapy sessions. So you actually sit there then and you think, oh, I've actually been through this. Like
Mm,
you says with the miscarriage, I lost a baby as well. Um, and I never spoke about that until I went to therapy. And no one even knows either. Like my mum does. I'm saying it here now.
yeah.
Like you, admit, I've got the scan pictures. I took, luckily, I'm fortunate enough to take the scan picture on Snapchat. So every year on that day, it pops up on my Snapchat memories, a picture of my baby. I've still got that scan
Hmm.
photo. But yeah, like my my ex partner, he strangled me when I was pregnant and everything. Like, it was a lot.
It's crazy. Like, I sit here and tell you things people would be absolutely horrified by, but I still am skimming the surface. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm still only giving bits. I don't want to, I want to give people hope. I want to make people feel like I can go and do that now. I'm not saying run out and put yourself in danger, but I'm saying be prepared to fight that battle because it is worth it. You
Yeah,
get to the end and, like, I'm now, what, 7 or 8 years on, and I love who I am. I love what I'm doing. Very proud of myself for getting through uni. I'm proud of myself at work. Like, I feel great joy, like, sitting on podcasts and sharing my story now. It didn't come overnight.
yeah,
I've worked really hard,
yeah,
but it's worth it.
yeah,
And that's, like, the most important message that I
yeah.
want to get out there. It is worth it. It will never not be
Yeah,
worth it.
most definitely. Because some people stay in that cycle, they don't heal, they don't go to counselling or therapy, they don't get the support they need, so they just stay toxic,
Mm,
and then just live that toxic lifestyle and never really, like now that you're healing, you're trying to grow from what you've been through and you're trying to change and be a better person and you're not that toxic girl no more, or you're trying not to be that
yeah.
toxic girl no more. You're
I'm much
trying to be
softer.
better.
I'm softer. Like, I'm more open to scenarios in life. I sleep better at night. I've got better friendships. My parents' relationship with myself is better. My sister's relationship is better. Like, I'm much calmer. I don't need to show myself to make people accept me anymore. Couldn't care less whether you like me or not, to be honest.
Yeah,
Like, I am who I am now. I'm very proud of who I've become. So I don't need validation off people anymore. I
yeah,
know that I'm worthy of good things in life. I might not
yeah,
know 100%, and I might still have days where I don't feel like I'm good enough, but I know I'm worthy of happiness. And that's why I will not tolerate anything that brings me anything other than peace,
yeah,
because that's just where I'm at now. But it took years, years and years and years of up, down, left, right, back to front, going back, coming forward, therapy, crying, angry.
yeah. And then, like, we've touched on this, but you sometimes leave those relationships, and then you end up getting another one that's toxic and exactly the same.
Mm,
And then, but that's another thing that people that because I think there's some people that are even in these toxic cycles and toxic relationships in this generation, people that I know now and people that are out there in this generation that we live in that don't even realise that they're toxic.
yeah.
Like they think they're normal
They're
and
unwilling to be
they
told
think
different.
their relationship's normal and what they're going through is normal. But then like they will judge people that leave one of those toxic relationships and get into another one. Oh well, at this point they say it's you.
Mm,
You've
you're the problem.
yeah, it's not the man.
No.
Oh well, I'm not being funny, but you've chosen another toxic man, or you've chosen another man the same. So you must be the problem now
Yeah.
because you've got in another relationship the same's happened. But that's what you're used to. That's what you know. So obviously, you accept it until now you grow and you realise and you go to therapy and oh okay, that's not a healthy relationship, that's very these things are very unhealthy, then you change what you look for and what you accept. But
Mm.
you can just go around in a vicious cycle, meeting the same man over again,
Yeah. Different name, different date of birth.
getting
But
into
yeah.
the same relationships,
Yeah.
yeah. And then at that point you think, oh well, I should have just stayed with the first
We
abuser.
we live in a generation of people who are afraid to say they failed. You can't not be perfect at something. There's no way you can say I'm not very good at that. Like, I am not good at dating. I know that. I know that. I get love bombed. Like, I even now to this day, like, I don't see past the thing that's right in front of me. Like, I
Yeah,
can't
you should go on the freedom program.
yeah, I can't. Building relationships for me is really difficult. Like, I keep the same people around me. Very fortunate to have very supportive people around me. But when it comes to dating, I will always find a problem because
Yeah,
I've almost healed too much. Like, I won't allow
yeah,
any disrespect. But
yeah,
like, we're taught that love's perfect and love's 100% all the time. It's not. Love is not easy. Like, relationships are not easy. So I now have to learn what's normal, like boundaries for arguments, what's
yeah,
normal, like for frustrations, and what's normal, like, what is a normal relationship, how does that, like, I need to learn that now.
yeah,
That's where I'm at now. So
yeah.
even though I feel the pressure at 31 to have children and I've not got a man, I want to be ready for a man, and I'm getting there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm getting there. I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and I know that kind of boundaries around what's acceptable and what's not, and what should I like take myself out of. And like what's normal, like what do you have to fight for normally in a relationship. Like I'm getting there and I'm understanding it and I'm feeling safe to be exposed to those scenarios.
Yeah.
But that's what's been hardest, because when you've gone from accepting everything to then learning red flags, everything's a red flag.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything can be a red flag. And it's like
Yeah.
learning, okay, well what's a mediocre red flag that
Yeah.
is normal,
What's a
and what's
pinkish
going to
red
smash you in
flag?
the face,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's really hard. It's really, really
Yeah.
hard. And
And because, like you said, because these men, they're so nice in the beginning and they don't show you their bad side. So obviously everyone's nice in the beginning. So it's establishing what is the honeymoon period.
yeah,
So when you meet a new person, are they love bombing me? Or is this the real them? Because the abuser was so nice and lovely and the perfect guy in the beginning. So everyone's nice in the beginning. So it's like riding that nice honeymoon period out and then seeing who they
yeah,
really are after like the first like couple of months or whatever, like who their true colours. Because
yeah.
everyone's nice in the beginning. So you're not going to know whether they're the same as your ex or.
And you don't like another thing that I'm very careful of is I don't tell a lot of people, especially men, like I've been through domestic violence,
Yeah,
because
because they
some men
use
will
that to their
think
advantage and
like
manipulate you.
alarm bells will start going, thinking, oh, she's been manipulated once, I might be able to bend this one. Like,
Most definitely, because you're vulnerable.
yeah,
You're vulnerable now. And you're admitting that you've been through that and you tell them. They know that you're a
mhm,
vulnerable girl because you've been through that. And they know that they can probably use that to their advantage and do the same to you because you've been through it already.
yeah.
And that's just the sad
So then I have
reality
to
of it.
navigate, what do I say and what do I not say? And is this man trustworthy enough to have this conversation with? Because inevitably, I would never want my PTSD to affect the person I end up with,
Yeah.
but it's going to. Because
Yeah.
there are going to be days where I have bad days, and there are going to be things that they do that trigger me, and it's not their fault, but they're going to have to be willing to look past that and think, okay, well, she needs my support.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do I like weigh up what I do say and what I don't say? Because I
Yeah.
don't want to become a problem before it even begins. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some men will hear that I've got a mental health problem and they'll be literally running up the M62. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, I'm not
but there's a lot of girls that they're dating that have got mental health problems. But like I says,
undiagnosed.
you have basically took the steps to like you realise like you was a bit different to what you were before that abusive relationship. Whereas there's some girls that have got mental health problems and some men love toxic females. And I've seen it spoke about on social media. Like they love it. Like if you're not toxic, they find you boring. So where
Yeah.
I've got to the point now where men find me boring because I won't
I
argue.
am boring.
I don't know, but
Don't expect any
no, I
excitement
am
from do you know what I
though.
mean? I am.
I am, and I don't like. I won't engage in any arguments or anything
No.
now because obviously I was in a toxic relationship, and I used to, like I says, like I'm not 100% blaming him. Like I was toxic as well. Like I did used to run my mouth to him and things like that, and argue with him as well. But that don't give him the right to beat me up,
No.
to put his hands on me. Like there's arguing with your partner, and then there's strangling your partner and
Yeah.
all of that. But I've got so now I've got so like I'm numb as well because of what I went through. I don't think I'm fully healed. So like when my nan passed away and I went to my nan's funeral, I couldn't even cry because I've been through so much over the years with him. Like so many different things. It's like, oh, it's just another thing. Like my nan died and I was closer to my nan than my mum. She died and I couldn't cry about it
Yeah.
because I'm so used to things happening. Oh, that's just another thing. Like I didn't even cry at the funeral. I was thinking, why can't I cry? Like
Yeah.
I've become emotionally numb. I've took so much stuff that nothing bothers me
Yeah. My
now.
mum's just been through very similar with like my grandfather passed away, her father. She couldn't cry. It wasn't until something happened where she actually just let it all out. But I'm not really a crier now. Like there aren't many things that get me going now. Like I don't put myself in scenarios, but all of a sudden I will get waves where I just absolutely break down. And I'm thinking, what on
Yeah,
earth triggered that? Like
everything
might be
just
something on the
hits you.
TV or might be something that I've seen on Instagram, or something will absolutely wave me. I feel physically sick. And then I'll
Yeah,
cry and then I think, okay. Like that's like
yeah,
I'm getting over it. But I'd much rather live my life like this now than be in the
yeah.
dark or the shadows, like not dealing with it and not understanding who I am and lashing out at people and hurting people's feelings just because I was angry and upset
Yeah, because
myself.
you're going through something, you're projecting, you was projecting. So you might sometimes, like you said, like with your mum, like you didn't have a very good relationship with your mum at the time because of what you was going through. Obviously, you wasn't in a good place, so you was projecting
Mm.
onto
I
her.
pushed her away because I knew she knew.
Yeah,
I knew if I let her in close enough, she'd figure out what was going on.
yeah.
So
What should we Oh, we still recording? How no, I just wanna ask how long have we been recording for now? Hour and 10 minutes. Yeah.
Wrap it up.
What should we, obviously I want to go back to this, but I think I might need to have a second episode with you, because me and her could sit down.
You're going to be here till 3 a.m.
Like, we could be here for 5 hours.
Yeah, we could just do a series on this. But yeah, wrap it up. Just talk about
like, this isn't the only one we're going to do. We're going to keep doing these on domestic violence. Yeah.
This is still recording.
Yeah, you have to cut it out.
We might need to do the whole outro.
Yeah, just wrap it up, and then you can cut that bit out.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you for coming on episode 1.
You're welcome.
Thank you for doing this powerful episode and sharing your story and your experience on domestic violence. Like I say, the reason why I started this podcast is because there's a lot of women that are going through it that are too embarrassed to talk about it. They don't want to seek help, or they feel too ashamed to. They can't talk to their family and friends because they feel judged, or because their family and friends have says to them, oh, well, you know, it's your own fault now. Like, you get what you deserve because you keep getting back with him. So I wanted to start this to show that, you know, it is okay. It's okay to talk about it.
Yeah, my Instagram's like tiny. Like, if anyone finds me on Instagram, it's Miss Envy. So it's EMMVEE, but it's always open. I get people messaging me all the time.
Yeah.
No question's a stupid question.
Yeah.
I can point you in the right direction for loads of different variations of therapy.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to help people now. So this is just a platform.
And this is why we're here. This is why we're sitting down, and this is why we're doing this, and this is why I started this, because if we can help just one woman, like I always say, if I can help just one woman not go through what I went through,
done my job,
then I'll be satisfied. Just one woman. Like, this might reach more, but just one, you know. I'm always here. I know all of the services because I've been through the Women's Refuge. I've been through, like I said, the court service. I got a 10-year restraining order. The National Centre for Domestic Violence. Obviously, I've got my qualifications in domestic violence now, my certificates. So if anyone wants to contact me, you know, like, that would make my day.
Yeah, it does.
It would
like, when people reach out, I really feel like, okay, like, I'm making sense now. Like, I can help.
All of this is for a reason. Turning our pain into purpose.
Absolutely.
Getting something. There's got to be something positive come out of what you've been through. Like, and now this is making me feel like, oh, well, it was worth it because now I can help other people.
Definitely.
So, I just want to say for the viewers, I've just started my own CIC journey to healing, to work with women and families that are experiencing or have experienced domestic abuse. And then obviously I've got this podcast, The Missing Piece. If anyone feels brave enough to come on and share their story, please do. It's appreciated, and we will revisit this on another episode.
I'll be back.